there, welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the assembly of your English paper piecing and the hexagon quilt that we're working on. As we've looked at this before, this is a scrappy quilt made with true scraps, and we're using the gray solid to border the diamond-shaped pieces and bring it all together for us. Now, when you're assembling this, it's always easiest to join one hexie with another hexie. And when we get into joining one hexie with two that are already joined, then that becomes a little more difficult. And as this grows, it will become even more difficult. Not so much that the technique is any different, but it's just a matter of how you can handle it, how you can get your hands around it to hold it in place while you're doing it. So that kind of plays into a bit of how comfortable you are with it and whether you choose to assemble it adding one piece on at a time or putting it into small sections and then joining those sections together. As I shared before, I decided to put the diamonds together first and then join it together using the gray pieces. At times it does become cumbersome because you want to leave your papers in until you have that hexagon completely surrounded by other hexagons with the paper. And in my case, that is something that I've left the hexagons in because I wanted to share with you how we do that. So today we're going to talk about removing the papers. We're also going to talk a little bit about fabric requirements and what you may need to do a quilt like this. And we are also going to talk a little bit about finishing techniques, just to get some ideas going so you can be thinking about what kind of backing you want to put on it and how you want to finish the bindings. So let's get started. Okay, so as we're getting this together, one of the things you want to know is how to remove the papers from the outside. As I said, you want to make sure that you leave the papers on the inside, and you may occasionally want to leave the papers on a little bit longer, depending on how you're storing it, your space requirements, and the space that you have to keep it in. It is neater with the paper in it, but it is harder to handle. So if we want to remove the papers, what I always do before I start is put a little hole in the papers. And then you can use anything to get it out. You can use a pencil. You just slide that pencil point right into the hole. And then use your thumb to hold the paper to the pencil, and you can pull it out. The absolute best tool is a crochet hook. Just a regular crochet hook. Pretty much any size, as long as the hook will fit in the hole, it will work for you. And then to do that, you're just going to do the same thing. Put that crochet hook in the hole. It slides in really easy. It slides in better than a pencil does because it has no rough edges. And then just hold it with your thumb and pull it out. And you can whip through and pull out papers really, really fast with a crochet hook. See, that goes really, really fast. It's like 6 of them just right there. So once you do that, then the quilt top becomes much more flexible, and you can get your hand around it so that you can add in the extra pieces. So that does help as far as that's concerned. Now, for this particular design, I have some things that I want to be thinking about as I move forward. What kind of backing do I want to use, and how do I want to bind it? Before we get to that, though, let's talk about fabric requirements. How much fabric does this take? How much fabric did I use in it? I have no idea. So I did some calculations, and in a typical 42 to 44 inch wide fabric, you can get about 224 hexagons using a 2.5 inch strip of fabric. Now, if you cut them a little smaller, you can get more. If you cut them bigger, you're going to get a few less. With the scraps, sometimes the scraps I used, I might have mentioned this before, were tiny, and I only got 2 or 3 hexes. I think there was a couple of instances where I only got one of an individual fabric, but my goal was to use up what I had for the color pieces and not have to buy anything else. And I think as you begin quilting, you will find that you always have extra fabric. It's very rare that you don't have enough to get a 2-inch by 2-inch square out of. And I'll tell you that some of the fabrics that were used in this quilt right here are in this because there were extras left over. Now, if it's a quilt that you're going to have and you're going to keep and you're going to use, I would recommend that you save a little piece and just put it away somewhere, maybe in your bottom of your linen closet or something, because something could happen to it and it might need a small repair. But for most things, you're not going to need that. Now, as we put this together, there were, I think I calculated with the number of hexes I had was somewhere in the 800 range. So that's going to be about 4 yards total of the scraps that I used to make this. And like I said, I didn't buy anything new. There were a couple of fabrics that I had never cut before that I would pick up 10 hexes out of it just to include it to have a large variety of different things. I will say though that you could do this if you have large pieces. You could do it not necessarily in a scrappy manner, but you could make a design within the diamond. You could have all of the outer ring one color and the inner 4 of a different color. Or you may choose to do stripes where this line was one color and this was another and this was another. Maybe even a rainbow effect. That might be cute too. So you have completely limitless options. You could even create the whole diamond in one color so that each diamond in your quilt was a different color. That would be cute as well. So many options, so many options. So how much fabric am I going to need to do the gray paths? And I've already gone through 2 yards, so that's going to be about 450 hexagons that I have created and are in this already. And it is probably 4 feet by, probably would have been good if I measured it, but let's say about 4 feet by 4 feet, roughly, maybe 4 by 5. I think it's about 4 feet wide and maybe about 5 feet. It's definitely going to be longer than it is wide. So that's about half. So I figure about 2 more yards, 1 3/4 to 2 yards to get it. And then I'll need to decide what I want to do in these spaces where we have a V pattern. Do I want to fill them in with gray? Do I want to fill them in with more scrappy to make it even? Do I want to use strips to make a border to make it straight? I haven't made that decision yet. So that's something that I'm going to need to think about. What I'm also going to need to think about is what I'm going to use for backing. And a lot of times this is what presents me with the hardest problem because I know what I want to use, but being able to find that fabric sometimes is difficult. Ideally for this one, I would love to have a backing that was multicolor, something that represents all the colors that I used in it, and then have the binding in gray. That would be ideal. Alternatively, I'd like to have something in a white or a cream, maybe with letters on it, writing. That would be good as well. I'm looking for something a little nostalgic, a little vintage if I go that way. So there are a lot of options. And then as far as the binding goes, I have 2 that I'm considering. The first one is putting on straight strips along the edges. So we would applique the hexagons to the straight strip, and then bind it the way you would bind any other quilt. The other option is to fill in the V patterns with the gray and have the border of the quilt in the actual zigzaggy, might be easiest to see it this way, zigzaggy pattern, and then put your batting and your backing on the back of this, and then use, depending on what the backing is, then use another gray hexie as the binding on the edge of the quilt. And what we would do is we would just slip stitch these on the edges to create a little lip to put the backing and the binding on. I do see some potential issues with that. It's going to be kind of finicky to get the backing and the batting exactly the right size so that when you start quilting it, it doesn't go over. And that may be something that I leave to do until after it's quilted for a final decision. So those are still up in the air, but that gives you an idea of where we're going with this. And obviously your choices and your backing and binding can be completely different from mine. This is just to give you a guide of what works for me, what I'm thinking, and how I'm moving forward with this quilt. We've covered a lot of basics on this, and at this point in the process, I'm hoping that you're doing well making your haxies and assembling these together, that you've got a plan in mind, or you're along the path to decisions to do that. And next time we meet up, we're going to be talking about the backing and the binding. At that time, I hope to have my binding in place, my backing in place and ready to go with it. So I'll leave you today with those thoughts, and hope to hear from you soon and see you in our next video. Thank you. Have a good day.